In the world of the 20th century, there was a hunt unlike any other. It didn't take place in the forests or the mountains, but on the cold, paved streets of London and Paris. The prey was not an animal, but a woman whose face was known to billions, yet whose soul was a mystery to all. She was the most photographed person in history, a bird of paradise trapped in a storm of silver flashes. August 31st, 1997. Paris is suffocating under a humid night sky. A black Mercedes speeds into a tunnel, pursued by a pack of predators on motorcycles. In a few seconds, the flashes will stop, the cameras will fall silent, and the world will lose its heart. But to understand the tragedy of the woman the world called Diana, we must look beyond the car crash. We must look beyond the crown, the palaces, and the diamonds. She was a commoner who became a princess, but discovered that a palace can be the loneliest place on earth. She was a rebel who broke the rules of a 1,000-year-old empire with nothing but a smile and a touch. This is the story of Princess Diana, the icon who was loved by everyone, but truly understood by no one. Part 1. The Sacrificial Lamb. Before she was a royal, she was a girl named Diana Spencer. She was born into an ancient aristocratic lineage, but her childhood was not a fairy tale. It was a study in silence and abandonment. When Diana was only 6, she watched from the shadows as her mother packed her bags and left, never to return. The sound of her mother's footsteps on the gravel driveway of Althorp was a sound that would haunt Diana for the rest of her life. She grew up in a house filled with portraits of ancestors, but very little warmth. She wasn't an academic genius. She was a quiet girl who loved ballet, children, and the dream of being rescued. She was looking for a love that had been missing since she was 6 years old. Then came the prince. Charles was the heir to the British throne, a man burdened by duty, expectations, and a secret love for another woman. He needed a bride, not a partner, but a symbol, a young, innocent, and unspoiled girl who could carry the future of the monarchy on her shoulders. Diana was 19. She was a kindergarten assistant who believed in happy endings. When the prince asked for her hand, she thought her life was beginning. She didn't realize she was being recruited into a job for which there was no description and no escape. July 29th, 1981. The world stopped. 750 million people watched the wedding of the century. To the public, it was the ultimate romantic fantasy. A beautiful girl in a dress made of dreams, walking toward a throne. But as Diana walked down that long, cold aisle, she wasn't looking at the altar. Her eyes were searching the pews. And there, she saw her, Camilla Parker Bowles, the third person in the marriage before it had even begun. In that moment, the fairy tale died. As the bells of London rang out in celebration, the 19-year-old princess realized she was not entering a marriage. She was entering a cage, and the door was already locking behind her. The lights went out. The cameras were turned off. And for the next 15 years, Diana would have to learn how to survive in a world where emotion was a weakness and the truth was a threat to the crown. Part 2. The Golden Cage. After the wedding of the century, the world expected Diana to vanish into a life of effortless luxury. They expected her to be a silent ornament on the arm of a future king. But as the heavy oak doors of the palace closed behind her, the young princess found herself in a world that felt less like a home and more like a museum, quiet, cold, and filled with ghosts. In this world, Motion was considered a breach of security. To the firm, as the royal family called itself, Diana was a vessel for the next generation, a demographic asset to be managed. She was 20 years old, a girl who craved touch and reassurance, suddenly surrounded by people who had spent their lives being taught never to show either. It was here, in the heart of the monarchy, that a silent war began. Diana began to shrink. The pressure was immense. Every move she made was analyzed. Every word she spoke was weighed. To cope with the overwhelming loneliness and the feeling of being not good enough, Diana developed an eating disorder, bulimia. She later described it as a secret disease. It was a cry for help that no one in the palace wanted to hear. She was a woman starving for affection in a house filled with banquets. While the world admired her slim figure and designer dresses, they didn't know it was the result of a profound internal agony. She was fainting in public. She was crying in private. And when she reached out to her husband, she was met with a wall of silence. Charles was a man of his own tragedies, but he could not understand a wife who felt too much. In the cold cloisters of the palace, Diana realized she was fighting a battle for her own sanity. But the greatest source of her pain was not the protocol. It was the presence of a ghost, Camilla Parker Bowles. She was the woman Charles had loved before Diana, and the woman he never stopped loving. Diana found photos of Camilla in Charles's diary. She saw cufflinks with intertwined C's. She felt Camilla's presence in every conversation, in every long silence during their tours. The marriage was not a union of two, but a crowded, suffocating arrangement of three. To the palace, this was the way things were done. To Diana, it was a slow, agonizing betrayal. She was the most desired woman in the world, yet she couldn't win the heart of the one man she had married. This rejection didn't just break her heart, it fueled a desperate need to find love elsewhere, from the only people who gave it to her unconditionally, the public. In 1982 and 1984, the shadows finally lifted for a moment. The birth of William and then Harry gave Diana a reason to survive. In her sons, she found the love she had been searching for since her mother left that gravel driveway years ago. She was a rebel mother. She insisted on taking them to school herself. She took them to theme parks, to homeless shelters, and to ordinary burger joints. She wanted them to see the world beyond the palace walls. She was determined that they would not grow up with the same emotional frostbite that had characterized the royal family for centuries. For the first time, the sacrificial lamb had something to protect, and in that protection, she found her strength. She began to realize that if she couldn't be a beloved wife, she would be a beloved mother, and eventually, a voice for the voiceless. Something was changing. The shy Dee who hid behind her fringe was disappearing. In her place, a new woman was emerging. She discovered that her fame was a weapon, and she decided to use it. Every time she stepped out of a car, she was communicating. Every dress was a message. She was becoming more popular than the monarchy itself, and this created a dangerous paradox. The more the public loved her, the more the palace resented her. She was outshining the king-in-waiting, and in the world of royalty, that is a cardinal sin. The cage was still there, but Diana was no longer just a bird singing for her captors. She was learning how to bend the bars. The marriage was dying, but the icon was being born. The war was no longer hidden. Diana was ready to tell her truth to the world, even if it meant burning down the house she lived in. Part 3. Rebel Princess. In April 1987, a car pulled up to London's Middlesex Hospital. Out stepped a woman who was supposed to be a mere symbol of a 1,000-year-old institution. At that time, the world was gripped by a new terror: HIV and AIDS. People were dying in isolation, treated as pariahs, feared as if their very breath was toxic. Royal protocol was clear: never touch the unclean. If you must, wear gloves. But as Diana walked into the ward, she did the unthinkable. She took off her gloves. She reached out and took the hand of a dying man with AIDS. That single handshake did more to educate the world than 1,000 medical lectures. In that one simple human gesture, Diana broke the walls of stigma. She wasn't acting as a princess. She was acting as a human being. The palace was horrified. They felt she was messing with things she didn't understand. But the public saw something else. They saw a woman who could touch the pain they were all feeling. She had found her purpose. She would be the Queen of Hearts, even if she was never destined to be the Queen of England. By the mid-90s, the golden cage had completely fractured. The separation between Charles and Diana was public, messy, and filled with mutual betrayal. But Diana was tired of the palace's spin doctors telling her story. She decided to reclaim her narrative. In November 1995, in total secrecy, a BBC film crew was smuggled into Kensington Palace. Over 23 million people tuned in to watch the most explosive interview in the history of the monarchy. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. With those words, Diana didn't just drop a bomb on her marriage. She dropped a bomb on the entire British establishment. She spoke about her bulimia, her self-harm, and her husband's infidelity. She was exposing the cold frostbite of the monarchy to the heat of the public eye. The palace was in a state of shock. To them, she had become a rogue agent, a woman with the power to take down the throne. The Queen finally ordered a divorce. Diana lost her Royal Highness title, her protection, and her place in the family. But in losing her crown, she had finally found her freedom. On the night Charles confessed his adultery on national television, Diana didn't hide. She wore what the world now calls the revenge dress. It was a statement in silk: I am not your victim, I am your successor. Freed from the constraints of the palace, Diana became a global diplomat of compassion. She was no longer visiting tea parties. She was walking into war zones. In January 1997, Diana traveled to Angola. The world watched in terror as the most famous woman on earth walked through an active minefield. This wasn't a photo op. It was a mission of absolute conviction. She sat with children who had lost their limbs to these hidden killers. She held them, she laughed with them, and she demanded that the world ban landmines forever. Like Achilles on the plains of Troy, she was a warrior, but her weapons were empathy and a refusal to look away from suffering. She was at the peak of her power. She was independent, beloved, and finally seemingly happy. She had survived the palace, she had survived the divorce, and she was building a new life with Dodi Al-Fayed. She felt that the storm had finally passed. But the predators were still there, and they were getting closer. August 1997, Paris. A city of love was about to become a city of shadows. The flashes were returning, and this time, they wouldn't just capture her image, they would hunt her into the dark. Part 4. The Final Flight. August 30th, 1997. Paris was a city of heat and heavy air. Inside the Ritz Hotel, Diana was looking for a moment of peace. She had spent the summer under the relentless gaze of the sun and the telephoto lenses of the world's press. She was a woman in love, a woman seeking a new beginning, but she was also a woman who felt the walls closing in. She told her friends she wanted to be normal. She wanted to walk down a street without a parade. But to the paparazzi, she was the billion-dollar prize. As she stepped into a black Mercedes with Dodi Al-Fayed just after midnight, the hunt reached its fever pitch. The car entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The engine roared, trying to outrun the flashing lights of the chasing motorcycles. In the blink of an eye, the control was lost. The screech of tires, the impact of metal against concrete. And then, a silence so profound it felt as if the world's heart had stopped beating. In the aftermath, as the smoke cleared, the flashes did not stop. Even as she lay dying in the wreckage, the cameras kept clicking. They had captured her life, and now they were capturing her exit. The Queen of Hearts was gone. The light had finally been extinguished by the very thing that made it shine so bright. When the sun rose on August 31st, the world woke up to a different reality. The grief was not just royal, it was universal. People who had never met her felt as if they had lost a sister, a mother, a friend. 60 tons of flowers were laid at the gates of Kensington Palace, a carpet of petals that smelled of perfume and sorrow. The monarchy, so used to its stiff upper lip, was paralyzed. They didn't know how to handle a woman who was more powerful in death than she was in life. Perhaps the most haunting image of the century was the sight of 2 young boys, William and Harry, walking behind their mother's coffin through the silent streets of London. On top of the flowers lay a card with a single word: Mummy. In that moment, the global icon was stripped away, and the world saw the raw human cost of fame. Diana did not stay in the shadows of that Paris tunnel. She stayed in the way we look at the world. She humanized an institution that had been frozen for centuries. She showed that a leader's greatest strength is not their crown, but their vulnerability. Her legacy lives on in the banned landmines she fought against. It lives in the way we treat the marginalized and the suffering. But most importantly, it lives in her sons, who carry her warmth into a new century. She wasn't just a princess of the United Kingdom. She was the princess of the people. She once said she wanted to be a queen in people's hearts. She achieved what no king or emperor could. She became immortal through kindness. Nikola Tesla gave us the light. Achilles gave us the glory. Oppenheimer gave us the fire. And Diana gave us the courage to feel. She was an iconic figure because she refused to be a ghost. She chose to be real in a world of masks. She was hunted, she was loved, and she was lost, but she was never defeated. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the light and the dark. This was Iconic Figures. If Diana's story touched your heart, hit the like button and subscribe as we continue to unmask the legends who built our world. Tell us in the comments, do you think Diana's tragedy was inevitable, or was she a victim of a world that didn't know how to protect her? Who should we unmask next?